So I think to find this cognitive penetration of perception of which Ivana is talking about, we might need the help of someone like Sangeetha Menon, who is a philosopher of the mind and a dean of the School of Humanities at the National Institute of Advanced Studies in the Indian Institute of Science campus in Bangalore, India. She's actually now there, so I think she also experienced, if it was not too cloudy as my other colleague in India told me, the solar eclipse. At NIAS, she's professor and head of the Consciousness Studies program. Dr. Menon has been working in the area of consciousness study for over 20 years. She has given numerous lectures and presentations in India, but also abroad, in Europe, Australia, United States, on wide-ranging issues related to consciousness, mind, and I want to really underline science, spirituality. So she doesn't use the word science, detaching it from spirituality, interfaces issues. Her publications cover areas that concern consciousness studies, brain sciences, altruism, aesthetics, Indian psychology, and science, spirituality, art dialogues. One of the latest books published is Brain, Self, and Consciousness, explaining the conspiracy of experience. Quite an intriguing title. And the edited volume, Interdisciplinary Perspective on Consciousness and the Self. And last but not least, the Beyond Experience, Consciousness in Bhagavad Gita, to name just a few. Sangeetha, I hope you are there and you can accompany us and navigate us into the realm of consciousness.
Yeah, hi, Elena. Good evening. Thank you, all of you. And you said whether it's cloudy here. Certainly, my eyes and mind are a bit cloudy because it's almost 11 p.m. in the night of the summer solstice day. And but then this is such a fantastic program and a concept that you folks have designed, and I'm thankful to Ivana, Lena, and Kelly, and all others for having me there with you. I hope you can hear me now. And yes, well, it was also a great experience to listen to the previous speakers. And what I want to share with you are perhaps some of the ideas that might reflect upon the thoughts of Ivana that were just read, and perhaps also some of the ideas, of course, from the physics point of view of Professor Lisa Randall shared with us. So as a philosopher of mind and as a philosopher who is extremely interested in how our mind and consciousness works, may I share some of these ideas with you, and then look forward to perhaps having a discussion and a dialogue with all of you. Well, in conjunction with the idea of embodied living that we use today to explain and understand much of human actions, the question that arises is about the place of the self. Where are we located? Where is the self placed to aid embodiment? Is embodied living the best way to understand consciousness? Is consciousness better understood as far as its core essence is concerned by the possibility of non-embodiment? Consciousness functions through the self, let us say, as self-awareness, self-other awareness, and self-other awareness. So there are these multiple dimensions of awareness. And the last one, which I said, the self-other awareness, is the third level of a meta-awareness that reflects on one's theory of mind. Does this third level warrant a non-embodied state? On the contrary, does metaphysical mysticism that upholds redemption from the body, which is the disembodied state, such as the liberation of the self, disregard the significance of embodied living and the sensitivities of the self? These central queries also invite us to conjecture on the order of the placement for the brain, mind, and consciousness, and the relation of each of this with ourself. So the central question is the self located in the brain or consciousness or both? Where are we situated? Where are we at this moment? Are the locality of the self and the non-locality of consciousness mutually tenable? Under the side of the brain self-interaction is the presence of reified human expressions such as empathy, which I would like to term as self-correlate. Why empathy? Is there an evolutionary advantage for favoring mirror neurons? Empathy and love create extended meanings for the self's existence and experience. The extensive nature of the brain teaches each one of us to make sense every time of the change that happens in front of us. The brain, together with our personal self, perfects the art of transformation and adaptation. Well, the cases of neuropsychiatric patients, subjects with spinal cord injuries and impaired proprioceptive capabilities, who make sense of their oddities, invoke a deeper dimension of the self, which is the core and is unnamed. Our ability to self-reflect in deeper ways and discover new meanings causes well-being. Just as we assume that there are neural correlates of consciousness, it might also be reckoned that consciousness has self-correlates. Self-correlates are reified capacities such as empathy, self-reflection, and abidance in a deeper self, which is beyond the binaries, which is beyond the divisions of any kind. We experience and recognize the smaller versions of self-correlates in the mechanisms of the many neuronal maps that are translated through the complex abilities and sensitivities of the body. In that sense, we can say body in a way is a smaller reflection of our core self. If not otherwise asked, the notion of the body is something given and natural to us, isn't it? But perplexity arises not just in terms of understanding, but even experiencing. When we reflect upon the possessor of the body, the user of the body, and beyond both this, the witness of the body. The very first thought on these three relations brings us the question of embodiment. Is embodiment the primary experience bound by certain extremities, such as the exteriority of our skin and the interiority of a private mind which we have? Is embodiment that which gives the distinction of the outside, inside, and yours, mine, both fine-tuned by a distinct sense of me and the rest of the world? The sense of the body, does it ensue from the basic distinction of the me and the rest? Or is it the other way around? Does the distinction of me and the other arise from the sense of the body? The major limits of current takes on embodiment is that the overt focus on a concept of the body to retain the concept of the body without its physicality and to place the possibility of transcendence as a property of embodied structures and events. The idea of the body in much of the cognitive science literature is skewed and restricted, being mostly limited to the functional representationalism and contextual body acts. The Platonic dual worlds theory, Cartesian mind-body interactionism, the Chalmersian easy problems and hard problem divide, all this which imply dualism and the exclusivity of the res extensa and the res cogitans continue to influence the theory of mind and body. Is in the Western world, a focused discussion on embodiment started with the postmodernistic age inspired by humanistic psychology. Humanistic psychology explores the issue of embodiment with emphasis on human perception. Merleau-Ponty stated that the perceiving mind is an incarnated mind, and Polanyi believed in tacit knowing and knowing other minds and knowing objects. Later bringing together the nuances of Buddhist thinking and cognitive sciences, Varela introduced embodied action. Now, for an alternative perspective, and since I'm speaking from India at this point, from the city called Bangalore, let me also share with you some of the ideas of a tradition which inspired me for a very long time, which is called the Vedanta tradition, which I think Dr. Monica Narula also referred to. The Vedantic notion of jiva is an equivalent of the embodied self, which we talk about in cognitive science. The Vedantic notion of jiva tries to explain the issue of embodiment in the context of what I wish to call as enworldment, situated within the larger question of the experience world. Embodiment is secondary to enworldment, since from a macrocosmic view, the world is the body of the God. Embodiment is understood in the context of enworldment. For Vedanta, embodiment is the means to realize the never-bodied nature of pure consciousness, which is the core, deeper self. The Vedantic notion of three bodies and embodiments breaks through the either-or aporia. For Vedanta, the dualist perspective emerges from the point of view of the body and is not a valid one from the point of view of Atman, or pure consciousness. The inside-outside view is from the point of view of the body and not pure consciousness. Such a binary doesn't exist in the plane of pure consciousness. This does not mean that the hierarchy is real, or in the hierarchy, pure consciousness at the top, then that would be another hierarchy. The emphasis is on the subjectivity that is embodied by a liberated person. Embodied liberation, according to Vedanta, is centering the body in pure consciousness and not the other way. Embodiment is viewed from the point of view of a complex and networked body system, according to Vedanta. Vedanta's take on embodied subjectivity retains the somatic expressions of the body while invoking a pure subjectivity by going beyond personal identity, which is framed exclusively by life-sustaining bodily functions. Today, when much of phenomenology-inspired cognitive sciences have saved the body from being just a tissue, muscle, physical thing to something more subjective, one is still stuck with the notion of a discrete, disconnected, and deconstructed body whose agency is defined around exclusive cognitive and neural functions rather than organismic expressions. And this perhaps is another expression of the hegemonic thinking that is still influencing the world mind. A perspective like that of Vedanta, which focuses on transcendence that ensues from pure consciousness and not embodiment, presents the concept of body in a fresh manner. I was thinking this evening of three frameworks, I'm sorry. First framework is the framework of duality and non-duality. Duality is a framework of subject-object, inner, outer, you, me and the rest of the world, etc., which is a bifurcating, dividing space which most of us live in our daily life. Non-duality is experiencing the other and the me in a context, but at the same time, the ability to see both in an encompassive and whole space. And I think this is very different from the binary divided way of looking at things. The second framework, which I thought I should share with you, is of knowledge and transcendence. Again, we live in a world which celebrates knowledge, which celebrates information, which celebrates academic scholarship, to put the least. But then such a knowledge also separates you and me, of a person having perhaps very specialized knowledge, but another person perhaps only be able to live it, but not be able to articulate it. So there is the possibility of transcendence, which goes beyond the process of knowing, knower, and knowledge, and at the same time reflect the truth or the deeper aspects of the mind, which we talk about in terms of knowledge, in terms of living the pure consciousness in daily life. The third framework, which I wish to share with you, is of the framework, of course, of the decade, and perhaps the decade which is to come is of the brain and the being. So today, these two are influencing and inspiring us to a great degree. Brain, because it happens to be the mystery of perhaps all that which is happening around us and inside us. I was extremely interested in listening to Professor Lisa Randall. She talks about a world which is outside the universe, but then there is a world within us, And that world is revealed only by the brain. And it is as mysterious and dark as perhaps the rest of the world, which we might call as the dark matter. But at the same time, there is another magnificent, fantastic, beautiful phenomenon, and I think which perhaps is the reason for all of us to be here together, which is called as the being, B-E-I-N-G, be with a capital B. Being is just being. I mean, you cannot explain it, you cannot describe it, because at the point of being, there is the conjunction, or there is the coming together of all divisions and separateness. So there is no separation of latitude, longitude, there's no separation, night and dark. I mean, at this point, I experience night and sleep. And of course, I think at your end, you are experiencing perhaps daylight and being very vibrant for the rest of the day. But then at the point of being, there is no separation of the night and the day, the dark and the light, because it's a communion of pluralities. And that is what I think the world is now looking forward. The communion of pluralities, the communion of differences, coming together at creating, co-creating a world which belongs to each one of us and all of us, and yet staying as mysterious as it can be by asking us continuously, what is consciousness? Thank you.
Wow, Sangeetha, thanks a lot. I think it was really absolutely needed to travel us from this understanding of multidimensionality that Lisa brought us into, but into the world of enwordment. I mean, we at Savi, we often are very preoccupied with issues of embodiment, and you are mentioning how the phenomenological tradition in Western science and philosophy has been fundamental, but in cultures like African cultures, you're talking about the Vedanta, phenomenology is something that didn't even need to be theorized scientifically, because it has been elaborated through the thinking and the living and the practice and the religious and spiritual paths. So